So I told you on Friday that, by my estimation, the most interesting moment in Jordan's career, the one I was most looking forward to seeing the portrayal of, was the flu game. And I know that people want to correct me, like, no, it's not the flu game. It's food poisoning. It's food poisoning. I understand that we were told last night on the documentary it was food poisoning, but even Jordan said it was the flu game, right? That's what we were all told at the time. We just assumed it was the flu. And so it was forever known as the flu game, even if it's not the flu. Does that make... Ramos is nodding his head. He gets it. Music gets it. Music. So, okay. Here's the story, and you guys tell me if I'm screwing it up. I've only watched the last episode once, or the last two episodes. It was actually episode 9. Tim Grover, who's, of course, the trainer, traveled with him. And Grover says that he was up late at night. It was after 10:30. Everything was closed, and Jordan wanted to get something to eat. And the only thing open was this one pizza place. So Jordan calls him, orders a pizza, eats the whole pizza by him, but they bring the pizza. Tim Grover picks it up at the door, and there's like there's five guys delivering the pizza. Whoever's heard of Five Guys? So Grover didn't say that they purposely poisoned the pizza, but he sure did make it out to seem a little bit suspicious. Five Guys show up for one pizza. Come on. And Jordan eats the pizza by himself, gets sick, throwing up, middle of the night, calls Grover to come to his room. He tells his mom he doesn't know if he can play. She tells him not to play. He goes and plays, drops 38 points. That's the flu game. Jerry Sloan's like, I didn't even know he was sick. He was sick? Like, Jerry, it was a hell of a basketball game played. Are you aware? 23's not feeling well. Everybody on earth who watched that game knew Michael Jordan wasn't feeling well, except apparently the coach of the other team. All right, so let me kind of go around the room a little bit. I'll give you my thoughts on it. 23 years they had to come up with a story, and that was the one we were told. Ryan Music, you are not old enough to see it live or remember it live. Now you've seen the flu game as it was portrayed. Do you believe the story?
I believe the story to the extent of he probably got a pizza and maybe it's what led him to not feeling well and him being ill for the next day's game. Anything beyond that, any sort of insinuation that there have been some nefarious characters that intentionally poisoned him, I don't believe for 1 second.
When was the last time you ordered a pizza?
Yes. I would say months ago.
Okay. And when that pizza came, can you ever remember a time in which you didn't, if there's the two security guys travel with him everywhere? Now, granted, they might not have been in the room at the time because it was late at night, but with Tim Grover picking the pizza up at the door, the idea that no one else had or was offered a slice, I don't know. I'm not saying that Jordan, who's 6'5", 6'6", couldn't crush a pizza. He could, but hell, Gus was dying of cancer. He couldn't offer him a slice? Hey, Gus, listen, it's 11 at night. I just got a good pie. Would you like a slice? What about you, Ramos? Do you buy the pizza story?
I remember a couple of years ago, maybe you remember this story too. Didn't Kobe Bryant get sick in Sacramento during the playoffs one time with it? And he said that he was not poisoned, but that they gave him bad food intentionally so that he would not play well against the Kings. So, yeah.
Nobody gives somebody bad food.
That's what they said.
Nobody does that. This is not 007. Nobody has these little droplets where you drop it in the food like, all of a sudden he passes out. It's not B.A. Baracus, right, where you put something in his drink so that he passes out because he doesn't want to fly with the A team. That doesn't happen. I'm not saying food poisoning doesn't happen. This is where I agree with Music. If, in fact, it was just a pizza, the idea that there's some random pizza place, the only pizza place in Salt Lake City in 97 that's open, just so happens to have some unsavory characters who want to poison the greatest athlete on earth at that time. Like, that is and look, I'll credit Tim Grover. He did not directly accuse them. My problem with the story is, like, you got so many details, but there's so many that if you're going to get that detail-oriented, give me the pizza place's name. It's 23 years. Either it's been open this long because it's an awesome place or it's no longer open. But you mean to tell me the next day or when he's really, really sick, somebody didn't go like, where did you order it from? I ordered from Jimmy's Pie Shop over on State Street. Right? If there was a real thought that the pizza place did this intentionally, trust me, the Jordan henchmen would have been out. So either the story is complete crap or just the insinuation that they did it on purpose. I don't even believe 4 people got to his hotel room floor. Don't believe that happened. Let's welcome in Chris Broussard from Fox Sports 1. He's covered the NBA for his entire professional life. He joins, he's a former Hooper himself. And, of course, you can hear him on The Odd Couple, a show that starts at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, along with crazy Uncle Rob Parker. First, do you believe the pizza story?
I do. I wonder why it became the flu story. There are some who've over the years said, oh, Jordan had a hangover. But I don't think it was the hangover, just looking at how he was and would it have lasted into that evening. So, I believe it. I don't, I don't understand why they would have said the pizza's for Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? Unless the place was closed and, was glad to do it for Mike. But yeah, I tend to believe it. What about you?
Well, it's the pizza for Michael. Now, look, the more I think about it, that part does make a little bit more sense, right? Because when I was a player in college, my first year at Oklahoma State, we flew in to play Missouri on the road. And, college town, it was like a Wednesday night game. Everything was shut down. We had practice ran long. It was like 9:45 at night. We roll in, and we were supposed to eat at Olive Garden. And they were like, sorry, our kitchen's closed. And my coach was like, you tell him Eddie Sutton his boys are hungry. And next thing we know, there's bowls of pasta and salad and breadsticks and dudes are running around, So I do get it from that, like, hey, maybe they didn't deliver. And you're like, we don't deliver and we're closed. Like, hey, Michael Jordan needs a pizza and four guys show up. I guess maybe you could believe Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant wouldn't share, but you get a whole pie and you don't offer somebody else a slice?
Well, that was interesting, but I guess the way they told it, he's the only one who was hungry. But I tell you, you brought up the Kobe Bryant. That was the first thing that came to my mind was remember Kobe in Sacramento when he ordered room service and then he turns up with food poisoning. That's the first thing I thought of. So, like I said, overall I believe it. And obviously if it was the flu, it wouldn't have necessarily gone away as quickly as it did. He was fine in the next game. And again, seeing him out there as weak as he was, it seems plausible to me.
Do you think they should have run it back?
I do. I just feel like, Doug, I think there's 2 ways for a dynasty to end. It should end one of 2 ways. 1, you get beat on the court. Or 2, your main guy or guys are so old that they retire. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar kind of retired and walked away, and that kind of ended Showtime. So I think that's how it should end. Now, I believe they obviously could have brought Phil and Michael back. I think they could have convinced Scottie. Remember, the Bulls could have went over the cap to pay Scottie whatever was necessary. They were paying Jordan $30 and $33 million those last 2 years. So they could have given Scottie, I don't know, 15, 18, whatever they wanted to give him. And him back. What they would have had to do was replace Rodman. Now, is it possible that Phil and Michael could have gotten another season out of Rodman? Because, Doug, his last 2 years after that, he only played 35 games total. And I don't know how much of it was physical, and I'm sure a great deal of it was mental. So could they have gotten more out of him? Maybe, maybe not, but I think the challenge for Krause, what he should have done is maybe gone out and tried to find replacements for Dennis Rodman and for some of the older vets. So built around Jordan and Pippen. And look, the Knicks got to the finals that year. And you remember they were nothing special with Sprewell and Marcus Camby and Allen Houston and all that. So I think that the Bulls could have gotten to the finals. And maybe the injection of a few newer players would have, gotten Jordan and Pippen, energized. And I think they would have beaten that San Antonio team. Obviously, it was Twin Towers, so that would have been a challenge. but they always had big bodies, that they could have thrown at those guys. And then on the perimeter, Jordan and Pippen would have had to dominate.
Yeah, I guess, let's look at it from this perspective. Pippen wanted to get paid, and yet he had ankle surgery, and he wouldn't have it over the previous summer. Then he hurts his back in the NBA Finals, right? Like, his body's breaking down right in front of you. You're like, okay, so his body's worse than it's ever been, and he wants to be paid more than he ever has. And by the way, Pippen was
remember, he did play. He played the next 2 seasons completely, though. Now, the 50 games.
Played 40 minutes a game. Played 40 minutes a game in the 50-game season, which was condensed, right? But again, you don't have the benefit of that information that his body. It's a little bit of a guessing game.
So you would have broken it up. You think that was the right move?
Well, no, not necessarily. What I would have, honestly, what I hate is that you go to people individually. Like, I think that's a mistake. I think what you do is the first thing you do is you go hat in hand and you go and you meet with Phil and you go like, look, if we can get you a really good team, okay, Jordan, Pick, would you sign on for that? Yes. Okay. That's all we need to hear. Then you go to Mike and you go, Mike, if we can get you Phil and a really good team, okay. But the problem is that they used the words rebuild and they didn't use the word reload.
Yes.
Right?
I mean, it was kind of like, I was surprised, Doug, last night when they said Reinsdorf. I didn't know that Reinsdorf had offered Phil, said you can come back. But it seems a bit, for lack of a better term, disingenuous, because you also are telling him we're going to rebuild. So, of course, Phil doesn't want to sign up for that. And Michael doesn't want anything like that. So I agree with you. I think Michael definitely wanted to play. And I think, if you had told Phil, we're going to reload, we're going to bring back Scottie, pay him what is necessary for a year, and then we're going to get you a couple of, bangers to replace Dennis Rodman, I think they would have come back.
Yeah, I think the big thing was Phil was done. Phil was done. He was just like, look, it's time to go. I'm done. And I don't think it was just Jerry Krause. I just think mentally, emotionally. And by the way, Phil nailed it with timing, right? Sat out for a year, takes over the Lakers, wins 3 straight titles.
Sure did. I think, too, it's interesting how after you win so much, you're kind of ready for the challenge. I'm talking about front offices and maybe some coaches. You're ready to rebuild. You're ready for the challenge of building up a new, championship team. We saw it in New England where they were ready to get rid of Brady. They were ready to – they didn't know this at the time, but you would have left one Super Bowl on the table, right? They were ready after 5 to move on, and it was the same thing with these Bulls. I think – and that's where I think front offices and coaches, Doug, have to realize it's not about you. It's not about Jerry Krause showing the world how great he is at putting a team together. If you just put the team together, and if you get credit, great. I mean, we should give you credit, but if you don't, fine. You're supposed to be in the background, and he did a great job of putting those teams together. There's no question. I just wish he had understood that, and maybe that more in the public and the players could have understood that he gets just as much credit for reloading, say, 3 times around Michael Jordan, right? You build 3 different championship groups around Michael Jordan. That should have gave him plenty of credit versus having to feel like I'm going to rebuild from scratch.
Well, there's an article out. Apparently, there's an unpublished, unfinished memoir in which he kind of goes through we didn't break it up because of ego. We broke it up because he kind of goes through like Luke Longley was done, Rodman was done, Pippen was breaking down and wanted a huge contract, and we just couldn't find. We didn't feel like we could find a way to make it work. And then Jordan, people forget Jordan in that long off season because the lockout cut his finger, almost cut his finger off, and it was in a cigar cutting. Like imagine that, like,
right?
He cut his finger in a cigar cutting accident. How do you think Jordan comes off in the end?
I think he comes off fine. Now, obviously, there are those that are loving it and those that are hating it and thinking he was a bully. And he, obviously he was tough on his teammates. The way they portrayed it, whether this is accurate or not, the way they portrayed it is that he really, he did it because it was necessary to win. Maybe the guys on his team were somewhat soft and he had to build them up and toughen them up for the playoffs. I even think the thing with Scott Burrell, like, obviously he was hard on Scott, but there are also a lot of times where they're clearly joking around. You know, like even on the bus in the early episodes. Now he puts him on blast. He's talking about, you know, all the women he's with and how much he drinks and all that. But he's joking around with him then. He's joking around with him in the locker room. You know, he's talking about he's missed all these shots, but he gives him a pound. You know, when he talked about the barroom brawl, he's joking yesterday in the episode. So I think you played on teams, Doug. Some of that's just he's messing around with the guy. And then, you know, people didn't like that he called him the B word, the H word. What did he call Larry Bird last night?
Dude,
you know,
I'm glad you brought that. I'm glad you brought that up. Look, I don't think America is soft per se. Probably we're a lot more sensitive.
We're getting much softer. Yeah.
We are. But I also think, like, look, I have friends that to this day, like, what's up, beat? Like that is
right.
how people talk. And by the way, it's not just in America. Like when there's a translation in Russian to the B word, and it starts also with a B. And one of my teammates, like, that's what he called everybody, right? That's just
right.
Again, that is more the locker room humor than what some have tried to portray, like in the presidential election 3 years ago, right? Sometimes it's actually a good thing. That's how dudes talk to each other, you know. And there are guys that go over the top and they won't stop, and you're just like, come on, there's women around, there's chicks around, you know, like kids around, like let's be civil here. But again, that doesn't translate negatively to me. Now, do you think that today's players would embrace that and want to play with him?
I think that if Jordan, the only way that type of leadership works, Doug, is if you're good enough to lead the team to championships. That, to me, that's what it is, because I don't think it would have worked in Jordan's era had he not been good enough to continually win championships. Because what happens is, you know, the rest of the guys, at that point, a lot of them didn't like him. But, hey, we're riding the gravy train. I'm part of the circus, too. I'm becoming a little bit of a celebrity, too, because there's a trickle-down effect from Michael and Scotty and Phil down to me. So they all go along with it, and they're winning. And you remember when he went to Washington as an older player, he tried to lead the same way. And those players, Doug, some of them who had grown up with Michael Jordan posters on their wall, you know, right. I mean, he's their idol. They couldn't stand him because that will only work if you're winning championships. I've seen other players in the league try to emulate that, and they were good, really good players, but not good enough to lead to championships, and it doesn't work. It'll destroy a team. So I think if Jordan, which I do think he was good enough, if he was in this era and he was winning consistently, I think he could get away with it. If he wasn't winning, I don't think it would have flown, whatever.
That's the voice of Chris Broussard. Check him out on The Odd Couple, which is daily, 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific, along with Crazy Uncle Rob Parker. Chris, thanks so much for joining us.
All right, Doug. Anytime.
Chris Broussard, one of the all-time good guys in this business. So happy to have him as part of our Fox Sports Radio family. Rob Parker as well. It's Doug Gottlieb Show here on Fox Sports Radio. All right,